If you're having trouble with mathematics, numbers getting problematic, don't you panic. Check MathWiz, the best math tutor on the planet. From fraction to algebra, simple maths, add up some trigonometry into that. Learning math is fun with MathWiz, and that's a fact. We're rooting for you.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another MathWiz Academy video. Hope you're going to enjoy today's lesson. If you are a return watcher, of course, I'm so proud of you for being diligent and going through these videos. If it is your first time watching, I hope this will not be the last. So as a revision, we want to remember that a positive multiplied by a positive is a positive. A negative multiplied by a negative is also a positive. A positive multiplied by a negative is a negative. And a negative multiplied by a positive is negative. Now, let's say you remember those rules. I do believe you should be able to go into today's lesson. So to jump into today's lesson, we are going to start with our first example. However, there is something we want to note throughout this video, and the general rule that we will be applying for this video is that we want to multiply the numbers followed by the letters. Okay, so provided we have that down, let us say we have 2m multiplied by 8. Now the first thing I want to note is the sign, so we always consider the sign. We have a positive multiplied by a positive, and so we know our answer is going to be positive. So in fact, maybe what I should have said is note the sign, multiply the numbers, then multiply the letters. So you always want to make sure you're identifying the sign first. The next thing we're going to do is to look at the numbers. So 2 multiplied by 8 is going to give us 16. And then the m, since it is not being multiplied by anything or any other letter, you simply write back the m. So 2m times 8. So 2m times 8 will simply give us 16m. And of course, even though we have the positive there, in your final answer, you don't need to write the plus in front. You can simply just write 16m. Okay, let us consider another example. What about negative 3 multiplied by negative 5p? So again, the first thing we want to consider is the sign. So a negative multiplied by a negative is going to give us a positive. So that's the first thing we note. We then want to multiply the numbers. So 3 times 5 is going to give us 15. And then the p has no other letter that it is being multiplied by. So we simply put back p. So minus 3 times minus 5p gives us positive 15p. Please note, in part 3 of this series, we will go through what happens if the letter is being multiplied by another letter, right? So please be sure to watch the video that comes after this in order to get those complex questions in. All right, let's go through a few more examples. Continuing with our examples, we have 7b multiplied by negative 2. So the first thing we want to do is to note the sign. So we have a positive multiplied by a negative. And so you know your answer is going to be a negative. You then have 7 multiplied by 2, which is going to give you 14. And then, as I said before, the letter is not being multiplied by any other letters, and so it simply remains, right? So 7b multiplied by negative 2 is negative 14b. For the next example, we have minus 9, so that is a negative, multiplied by 2y, which is a positive. So a negative times a positive is going to give us a negative. We then have 9 times 2, which is going to give us 18. And then the y, which is by itself, will simply be written back. Okay, so we're going to go through another set of examples, and then I will give you a few to try on your own. So going through another set of examples, but this time in no particular order in terms of the rules. Okay, so we have -4 multiplied by 5b. So we have a negative multiplied by a positive. So we know our answer is going to be negative. We then have the numbers being multiplied. So 4 times 5 is going to give us 20, and the b is simply by itself. And so we write it back. So your answer would be -20b. For the second example, we have 8m multiplied by 5. So we have a positive multiplied by a positive, which will give us a positive. We then have 8 multiplied by 5, which is going to give us 40. And then the m is simply by itself, so we write it back. Now please note, you don't need to write your answer with the plus in front. We usually only do that when there's a negative, so instead of writing plus 40m, you could just write 40m. So the plus is implied, and all the persons who do know math and they are math whizzes, they would for sure know that there's a plus implied in front. So let's go through 2 more examples, and then I will give you your set to try. So for the next question, we have 6 multiplied by -4y. And so we have a positive multiplied by a negative, which is going to give us a negative. We then multiply the numbers. So 6 multiplied by 4 is 24. And the y, which is left over, because it's not being multiplied by anything, we simply write it back. Okay, and for the final example for this video, before you get to try on your own, we have a negative multiplied by a negative, so we know we should get a positive. We then have 7 multiplied by 4, which is 28. And then we have p, which is left over on its own. So the p, not being multiplied by anything, would just be written back. And of course, just like with the previous example, you don't need to put the plus in front. You simply put 28p. Okay, I'm going to write a few for you to try on your own. So I would advise that you go ahead and try these questions, press pause, work them out on your own, and then you can press play to receive the solution. So provided you work those on your own, for the first one, we have a positive multiplied by a negative, and so we should have known that our answer would give us a negative. We then, after that, will multiply the numbers. So we have 9 multiplied by 3, which is going to give us 27. The r is not being multiplied by any other letters, and so we write it back. So your answer for the first one is -27r. For the second one, we have a positive multiplied by a positive, and so the answer is also going to give us a positive. We then want to multiply the numbers. So we have 5 times 6, which is going to give us 30. And then we have the letter p not being multiplied by any other letters. So we put back the p, and of course, we want to write this as 30p, no plus in front. Okay, for the next one, we have a positive multiplied by a negative, which is going to give a negative. We then multiply the numbers. So 4 times 2 is going to give us 8. And then we have the m by itself, so we simply write it back. Then for your final question, I hope you've been getting them right. I'm rooting for you. If not, guys, just remember to go over the video at your own pace to ensure that you master the skill. All right, so for this next one, we have a negative multiplied by a negative, so you're going to get a positive. We then have 8 multiplied by 4, which is going to give us 32, and then the y, which is by itself, not being multiplied by anything, we will write it back. Of course, our final answer, we don't want the plus in front, so I would expect you to write it as 32y. Okay, so if you did find this video useful, be sure to leave a comment below. Be sure to subscribe, like, tell your friends, or if you have a younger sibling or cousin, be sure that you share the resources with them. As usual, here at Matters Academy, I am rooting for you, and I will see you in the next video.